Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome into the Athletics Best on the Board. Let me be the 87th person or so to wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving. Michael Beller and Casey Joyner here to walk through our best bets for the remaining games in Week 12. Casey, happy Thanksgiving to you.
Same to you. How'd it go?
Great day. Great, good, fun family day. If you see the different setting, don't have my usual bookshelf and everything behind me. I am here in Cleveland at my mother-in-law's. Got a live studio audience in front of me actually right now. So this is exciting stuff. This is exciting stuff. This is exactly what a holiday should be, though.
Yeah, it should be absolutely family and podcasting. What isn't that what the Pilgrims wanted, right?
I think that's exactly what we were going for, and also hopefully some winning bets, right?
Yes.
I think that's exactly what we hope that we got. So Week 12 got off to a start. I don't know if I would call it an exactly thrilling start with the games that bookended the day around that great Raiders-Cowboys game in the afternoon, but it certainly got off to a start on Thanksgiving. We're going to look ahead to the rest of the week to come. We got a big Week 12 Sunday. I think a pretty fun slate actually ahead of us, KC. So we're going to talk through it on this episode of Best on the Board presented by BetMGM. Last week, 1-2 for you, KC. 2-1 for me. You're at 11-20-1 on the season. I am at 13-16. Let's get into it. Let's get hot. Let's start right here. We still got plenty of time to turn this thing around for the end of the season. Let's go with one of your picks first. Patriots and Titans. Patriots 6.5-point favorites in this game at home against the Titans, a Titans team that is dealing with just a ton of injury. 2-1 since losing Derrick Henry, but clearly they have not been the same team without Derrick Henry.
No, and you picked up on that last week. Excuse me, that pick where you picked Houston, Tennessee, and that's a big thing. That their run game is nowhere near as good. I mean, Adrian Peterson's now gone. I mean, he wasn't what they thought he was going to be. They got Hilliard in there now, but their running game is really bad right now. But the reason I'm picking this is because they've got 238 yards on the ground over the past 3 weeks, so they're obviously not doing well on the ground. Julio Jones on IR. A.J. Brown suffered a concussion and a hand injury last week. And not just a concussion, he got a hand injury too. So even if he does play, he's not going to be anywhere near as good as he usually would be. And if you're Bill Belichick, okay, you're none of A.J. Brown. I'm not worried about Nick Westbrook-Ikini, so I'm not really worried about him. I'm not worried about Jeff Swain as a tight end. I'm not really worried about their ground game. The only thing I'm worried about is shutting down a banged-up A.J. Brown and seeing if I can get Ryan Tannehill to throw more interceptions like he did last week. Yes. So I'm like, okay, they're not going to have any kind of an offense. The Patriots offense they've got the most creative ground game in the league. They do a fantastic job. They just going to punch you straight in the mouth. They can do it with power running, but they're also incredibly creative. So as a defense, you can't overplay them in any particular way. So Tennessee is normally pretty good against the run. I don't think that they will be, though. And not only that, they've allowed fewer than 10 points in 3 straight games. I mean, it's something that's been for that kind of a streak. It's very rare to have that happen. So I think, and they've scored 24 more points in 7 straight games. They just keep adding up. I'm like, I don't understand why the Patriots aren't more than the 7-point favorite. I think if where these teams are right now, they should. That spread is based on where the Titans have been, not where they are.
You know, the galaxy brain take on this game, KC, is the whole conventional wisdom. Bill Belichick takes away your best player. What if there's no best player to take away, right? Then did the Titans figure out some magic backdoor to solving the Patriots? Don't have a best player to take away. Then Bill Belichick spontaneously combusts and they win this game. I mean, I really think that's something where you're like, the Titans are going to be if these two, let's fast forward 7 weeks. These two teams meet in the playoffs. Derrick Henry's healthy. A.J. Brown's healthy. It's totally different. The Titans are probably favored in that setting. But this is just a horrible time for the Titans to be catching the Patriots. Absolutely horrible time. Love this pick. Not making it myself. I am on the Patriots in my survivor pool where I am still alive. I feel very confident in the Patriots pick there. It's going to be a popular pick for obvious reasons, but I just there's really no way to get behind the Titans. I will say if there's a silver lining from that game against the Texans last week, they put up 420 yards of offense, and that was after averaging 230 in the first 2 games without Derrick Henry. So they did do that, but a much different opponent on the other side in Houston versus what they're going to see in New England, especially, as you said, with what New England can do running the ball. That is a very explosive duo that they now have. Ramondre Stevenson has looked great over the last few weeks. Pairing him with Damian Harris, like the Patriots here in this spot. I'm going to go to a road underdog for my first pick, KC, a team that I've talked about quite a bit on this show. The Minnesota Vikings are 3-point dogs in San Francisco. I love this team. You've probably heard me say this 7 times this season. I'm going to say it again. I love teams that can do what they want to do reliably. Doesn't always lead to wins, doesn't always make you the best team, but the Vikings, pretty much every time they go out there, they know exactly what they want to do. They want to get Dalvin Cook going. They want to be able to hit some big plays, get 8 to 10 targets for both Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, and have Kirk Cousins play efficient football, not turn the ball over. And they do that a lot. Sometimes they lose, but they still do that. And I just love having a team that can bank on doing what they want to do more often than not. And that's the Minnesota Vikings. That's this Minnesota offense. So getting 3 in San Francisco feels like a really good spot for this team to me. I see the Vikings as on an island in the NFC. We have the top-heavy group of the conference, the 5 teams that we know are headed to the playoffs in one way or another. We have the morass of mediocrity behind them, where some teams, some combination of the Eagles and the Panthers and the Saints are going to get into the playoffs. And then you've got the Vikings in between, not quite with that top group of teams, but I think certainly better than the rest. And the 49ers are in that rest of teams. I know the 49ers have looked better over these last few weeks since they've gotten healthy, since they've gotten George Kittle back. They've gotten Brandon Ayuk going. Love what they're doing with Deebo Samuel, getting creative, using him as a running back. And then that also elevates what Brandon Ayuk is able to do because there's more targets available for him. It's a very creative offense that we've seen from Kyle Shanahan over the last 3 weeks or so. But we also have to be realistic about the manner in which they have gotten to this point. They caught the Rams at a great moment. They beat up on a bad Jaguars team a week ago. It's been a little bit different for the Vikings, a higher degree of difficulty. And we know that home field advantage has meant virtually nothing in the NFL this season. So this right here, this Vikings +3, I think this assumes that we're talking about a previous home field advantage. These feel like even teams to me, so I'll happily take the 3 and run with it.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you look at the 49ers, or sorry, you look at the Vikings, then they've got the makings of a good defense at times this year. But when you look at their secondary over the past 4 weeks since week 8 per True Media, the Vikings ranked. If I do a fantasy ranking of defenses and how they do in vertical passing, and they're 30th in the league in vertical pass, or in fantasy points allowed on vertical passes since week 8. But I look at that against San Francisco and I go, okay, I still don't trust Brandon Ayuk. I know he's playing better, but I don't fully trust him. And I Debo's very good, but it's like, okay, will San Francisco do that? I'm like, well, San Francisco does that. Now you're asking Garoppolo to win the game. And I'm like, I don't like that from San Francisco's perspective. So if they can get the vertical passing game going, I think they can cover this. But again, are they going to want to trust Garoppolo to throw as often as they should to take full advantage of that? Because if you try and do it the other way and they try and run the football, you're playing into the Minnesota's hands. So as long as San Francisco can't get that going, or if Garoppolo gets it going, but he makes a couple of interceptions, a couple of bad decisions, then I would be behind this pick.
First 2 games that we've talked about here, Patriots, Titans, and Vikings, Niners, huge games in the playoff race, one in the AFC, one in the NFC. This is another one that you're picking here that is going to matter to at least one team a great deal in the NFC. And KC, I got to ask, what has changed for you here with the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that you've been fading over the last few weeks, but here they are, 3.5-point favorites in New York against the Giants, and you are riding with the Eagles. Let's hear what the change of heart comes from.
I'll start with, I did an article for the Inquirer this week. I write for a weekly article about the Eagles for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and they're right now at plus 1,100 to win the NFC East. And I looked at it, I'm like, plus 1,100? Mind you, I wrote this article before yesterday's game went out. Yeah, before the loss like that. And I went through, and the New York Times has this playoff predictor software that you can do. And I went into this playoff predictor software, and if you post all the different wins, I'm like, okay, what do I think the Eagles can do? What do I think Cowboys could do? So it's like, it doesn't take only a couple of games to go a particular way, and suddenly the Eagles would have like 3-1 odds to win. Or, it would be like, okay, it shouldn't be as where it is right now. So like, I think the Eagles are being a vastly undervalued team. The thing that gets me is they're running the football, and they're running it very effectively, and they're being as creative as they can be. They're very inside zone heavy. So it's a certain type of power running they're going to do. This is not a subterfuge team. They're going to do run pass options and things. They're going to do that kind of stuff because you're going to do it when you have Jalen Hurts. But they're not a team that's going to be really creative. They just have really great offensive linemen, and they've got the best offensive line coach in the league. They've rushed for 175 or more yards in 4 straight games. That's only the 44th time that's been done since 2000. So basically, teams do that about 2 times per year. And of course, when you can run that often or with that effectiveness, you're going to win a whole lot of games. Their defense is playing a lot better because their offense is protecting them, and they're able to be a bit more aggressive. In fact, a lot more aggressive than they were earlier in the year. So Jonathan Gannon, we're finally seeing why they made him a defensive coordinator. He's not a great defensive coordinator yet, but first few weeks of the year, I wondered why in the world the guy had a job. And now it's like, okay, he's playing really well. And the Giants, their offense. Then look at the talent they have. But the Giants play to their talent level. Yeah, they should be within 3.5, but they're not playing their talent level. They fired offensive coordinator. You're not going to get a huge change in production when you fire the coordinator. You can't change the system. They are who they are right now. I'm looking at this going, the way the Eagles are playing right now, again, people are thinking about them the way they played the whole year. It's like if you take the last month and how they played, the Giants have played, the Eagles should be more than, it's 3.5 is a gift for them. I think that I would buy it down to 3 if I could. If there's an offer out there, I would buy it down to 3. But I think I wouldn't be surprised to see them win by a touchdown, because when you can run as well as they can run, it's just a huge advantage.
There's been a sea change for the Eagles over the last month with that shift to the run-heavy offense. And, we see that teams can surge and then come back, right? The NFL season, even though it's a short season compared with other sports we talk about, it's still an ebb and a flow. And so when you do see a team turn things around in such a way that the Eagles have, you want to be able to point to something substantive that has changed for the team and say, because of this, that is now happening. And sometimes you can't. And that's when you look at a team's turnaround and say, yeah, maybe it's just sort of the way the game shakes out every now and again. But what the Eagles have done, we do have that substantive change that tells us, this team has a new identity than what it was in September and the first couple weeks of October. This is a much different team now, and a team that is competitive, a team that I do think, whether it is by sneaking up on the Cowboys and winning the NFC East or by getting one of those wild card spots behind the Minnesota Vikings, of course, that they ultimately are a playoff-bound team. So this is a big game for them. If that's going to be true, if we're going to be right about them, even though this is a road game, you can't lose to the Giants. You can't go into New York and lose to a Giants team that, frankly, is already thinking about 2022 and is probably ready for the season to be over as soon as possible. So a big spot for the Eagles, like this play here on them. -3.5 at the Giants. I'm going to quickly go back to the game that I already picked once. I'm going to pick the total on a 2. I'll get us out of here on this one quickly because I basically already said it. Love what Minnesota does offensively. Love what the 49ers have done since getting healthy. And it's really the 49ers side of things that pushes this to the number that I like, over 48.5 for Vikings and 49ers. The one concern is that because of what the 49ers do, you could see a game that moves pretty fast, right? You could see a game that only has 2 possessions in a quarter because of what the 49ers do offensively and what they want to do offensively, no matter if they get Eli Mitchell back or if they're leaning on Jeff Wilson again this week. And so that's a little bit of a concern for any number that gets into the high 40s. But both of these teams do what they do so well, do what they do very efficiently. And so I don't think this is a game that needs volume and possessions to get to this point. I would happily take volume and possessions, but it doesn't need that to get to 49 or 50 or 51. So I feel like there are multiple paths to this game going over this number. And it just feels like when you simulate this game in your head, there are way more ways to get over the number than under the number because of the way these two teams live offensively. And so that's why I like it.
When you have that much, this much big playability on both sides of the ball, if they get Mitchell back, then they've got even more big playability. Yeah. Wilson's not a big play guy, but mind you, if you put him in a goal line, he'll find the end zone. So like that. Kittle's back to what he was. You look at Kittle and Samuel, and you look at Ayuk, and we mentioned earlier the Minnesota Vikings issues in covering the vertical passing game. So you look at that. Yeah, I agree with you. There are many more paths to above this than there are below this, and that's a good way to go.
You've got at least 6 chunk play players in this game, and in my calculation of that, I'm not even counting Adam Thielen because of just his what he does is a little bit different. It's not like Adam Thielen can get you 20 yards. He's not going to take 20 and turn it into 37, right? But like with Jefferson, with Cook, with Kittle, Ayuk, Samuel, Mitchell, if he plays, there are a ton of chunk play players in this game, and that's why I like it to go over.
I'd add in Tyler Conklin too for the goal line threat. He's not a chunk play player, but as far as a goal line threat, I mean, there's a guy who can, there's another guy who can put the ball in the end zone.
We're talking about a game with Dalvin Cook and Jeff Wilson and George Kittle, and maybe the best goal line player in the game is Adam Thielen, right? With what he's done over the last few years being a touchdown machine. So a lot of ways that this game goes over, not so many I feel that it goes under. Of course, all of these coming to you from BetMGM, our gambling partner and the presenting sponsor of Best on the Board. Right now, you bet $10, win $200, plus get a year-long subscription to The Athletic. Go to betmgm.com/TA-best. You have to take advantage of this offer from the king of sportsbooks and do it now. Bet 10, win 200, plus get a free year-long subscription to The Athletic. Just go to betmgm.com/TA-best. This is a new customer offer for BetMGM customers. Terms and conditions apply. All right, KC, one more pick a piece. Why don't you get us started here? You just can't get out of the muck, my friend. Last week you picked games that involved the Texans, the Jets, the Jaguars, and I think maybe the Lions, some other bad team. I just remember it was another bad team. And now we get two of them together, and you're like, oh my God, I got to get in on this. Texans -2.5 against the Jets. Let's hear the pick.
Well, you convinced me last week Houston's playing so much better. And mind you, David Culley's done a good job with, if you give them a couple, 3 more wins, if Tyrod Taylor had stayed healthy, David Culley would be a coach of the year candidate. I'm not saying he'd win it, but you'd be seriously considering what he could be. I mean, when they lost the quarterback, it's a big deal, but obviously they have Taylor back. He's doing good running the ball. He's not so good passing the ball, but he's doing good running the ball. The Texans gave Miami a strong run for the money a couple weeks ago. They pulled the upset off over Tennessee. They've got 10 takeaways over the last 2 weeks. I mean, their defense has been a turnover creating machine. And mind you, I mean, this is against the Jets. Now, the Jets are playing Zach Wilson, and he's the worst quarterback that they've had this year. I mean, that says something when Mike White and Joe Flacco have been better than you.
And Josh Johnson for like a quarter and a half, too.
Yeah, exactly. He's got a 5% interception rate this year. 1 out of 20 passes that he's throwing is getting picked off. And now he's facing a team that has 10 takeaways the past 2 weeks. The Jets are inept at takeaways. They have 8 all year, and they posted 2 of them in that blowout loss a couple weeks ago that were meaningless. You take those out, they've had 6 the whole year. I think that the Texans is going to win the turnover battle by at least 2. And they've got, if Taylor starts to play better, and you saw progress last week, again, the Titans defense is pretty good, and the Jets defense is the worst in the league. If you see Tyrod Taylor playing at even just a mid-tier rate, and you've got everything else they've got going, I'm like, I like them a lot. I think they go win by easily more than 3.
This is Best on the Board, obviously, not our fantasy show, but I do host our fantasy show, and you write fantasy columns for us. So I just want to throw this at you. We talked about this on our show on a Wednesday. Has there ever been a team as bad as the Jets that has like 3 for sure fantasy starters? Because they do, right? I mean, Corey Davis, you're probably starting him.
Yeah.
Jamison Crowder, you're probably starting him.
Yep.
Ty Johnson with Michael Carter out, you're probably starting him. And like, you feel good about starting all those guys. You could throw Elijah Moore in there. It's like, They actually have some like fun talent on offense. Of course, when Michael Carter's healthy, he's in that mix too, but they just suck.
Yeah, but the defense is the defense has just been atrociously bad. The metrics, when you start looking at their metrics in the run and the pass, they're just abysmal. Elijah Moore is very good. I think he should be a starter, but it's the big thing is that, and you can't predict turnovers from game to game, not necessarily. But when I look at the Texans going, they put up 10 takeaways the past 2 weeks, 5 in each game. Like, okay, so they've been doing it very well. And again, hey, if you're talking Mike White in this offense a couple weeks ago and things, and maybe catching lightning in a bottle, yeah, it's fun. I just think Wilson's going to be rusty, and if he throws a couple 3 interceptions, I just think Houston can. Like I said, if you win the turnover battle by 2, you're probably going to win the game. I mean, you've got a tremendous chance to win the game, and I think. And if you can win the game, you're going to win by more than 3 again with the Jets because Michael Carter's out too. By the way, he's a very big engine for the offense. I like Ty Johnson. I've got him in a couple leagues and starting with fantasy, but I just don't think he has quite the impact that Carter does. Plus, it's the depth. If you move him up to 1, now you're moving Coleman up to 2, and I really don't like what Coleman is. So it takes away something from the offense.
All right, I've got one more pick for us before we wrap things up. Huge week, Casey, in the AFC North. We've got the Browns and the Ravens getting together on Sunday Night Football. Earlier in the day on Sunday, the Steelers and the Bengals. That's where I go for my final pick. I like the Steelers plus 3.5 in this one. It was actually up at 4.5 earlier in the week. I liked it even better at 4.5 than I did. Liked it about, let's say, 1 point better at 4.5 than I did at 3.5. But I still like it here for a number of reasons. First of all, second time these two teams get together, very familiar with one another personnel-wise, a lot of carryover from last year to this year, and there's just a tendency when teams are this familiar with one another and above average teams, as Pittsburgh and Cincinnati both are, that the game is played close. Then you think about the styles that these two teams play, both teams that are going to lean on the defense, especially on Pittsburgh's side, both teams that are very happy to trust their running backs, Najee Harris and Joe Mixon, both teams that have explosion in their passing games, but haven't quite leaned on it to the way that I think a lot of us expected coming into the year, especially Cincinnati. I really thought Cincinnati was going to take a major step forward as a passing offense this season. I really thought that there was a chance, there was a scenario in which we were talking about them at the end of the season, the way we talked about a team like Dallas coming into the season, with Joe Burrow taking a step forward, with getting Jamar Chase grouped with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. And it just hasn't been there. They've been a fine passing offense, but neither the explosiveness nor the volume has been there for the passing game. And so that all adds up to this game being close. Minkah Fitzpatrick, back for the Steelers. TJ Watt sounds like he will be back for the Steelers as well after missing last week's game. That's a huge difference, right? I mean, the Chargers, great offense, no doubt about it. A whole lot of talent on that team. When you can put together Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams for a guy like Justin Herbert, you're going to rip off some big plays. You're going to put up some big scores. But throw Mika Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt on the field in that game, I don't know if the Chargers put up 41 the way that they did a week ago. So now you get those guys back for Pittsburgh. You do it in a game that just has the feeling of being much more of a grab and hold sort of game rather than free-flowing the way that we saw Steelers and Chargers a week ago. And it just feels like a game that stays within 3. You could flip this, Casey. You could put this game in Pittsburgh, and you could have Pittsburgh be a slightly better team and have the Bengals plus 3.5. I'm all over the Bengals in that spot. I just think this is a game that stays within a one-score window. All game is ultimately decided late in the fourth quarter with a field goal from someone. So I like the Steelers getting the 3.5.
I wish they had Joe Hayden back. I would be a lot more on this pick if they had Hayden, because he's allowing every time I do these 4-week windows for yards per target allowed for cornerbacks and things, he's allowing less than 5 yards. It was like the last time I looked, it was like 2.8. I mean, the guy's allowing nothing, but he's hurt. The good thing news for them though is Jamar Chase. You can start to see the rookie wall starting to come in. I'm not saying he's not an impact player anymore, but you look at what he was earlier in the year and just look at his metrics of the past 2 weeks, and you can start to see things are starting to decline just a tiny bit there. I think I could see the rookie wall hitting him, and it's not hitting Najee Harris in the same way. So I like it from that perspective. If I knew Hayden could play, and I think he's not going to play in this one. That's the one that worries me. But for the Bengals to win by more than 3.5, they're going to need to go pass heavy to go after the Steelers. I just don't think they're going to want to do that. I think they're still going to want to play the slugfest kind of game. And if you play a slugfest kind of game, you play a game that leans towards this. If they were willing to go shootout mode, I would be more on board with the Bengals covering this. But if you're going to go slugfest, I think you're playing in the Steelers' hands. So I like this pick.
I just think they can't go shootout mode with their offensive line against what the Steelers can do getting after the quarterback. I think that's really the problem for Cincinnati here. I think they've got everything else to go shootout mode. And if they had a little bit better of a line in front of Joe Burrow, then maybe they would go that way. But that's a dangerous route to travel against a Pittsburgh team with a healthy TJ Watt when you have the sort of line that Cincinnati has. So that's a project for this coming offseason for Cincinnati. Love what they've been doing. Think we are going to be talking about them as a years-long contender in the AFC, but they really need to build up that line before we're talking about them as anything more than a semi-surprise playoff team, which we could be talking about them as this season. So I wrap it up with Steelers plus 3.5 in Cincinnati this week, and that's going to do it for this episode of Best on the Board. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking some time out of your holiday weekend to spend with a couple degenerates like me and KC. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. KC, again, happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend.
Same to you. Appreciate it.
Thanks again for listening. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of the holiday weekend. Be safe, be happy. And of course, as always, we sign off with happy betting. We'll talk to you soon.